New Delhi slams Donald Trump's threat of substantial tariff hikes. India has accused both the United States and the European Union for the unreasonable and unjustified targeting. Ministry of External Affairs further went on to say that, like any major economy, India will take all necessary measures to safeguard its national interests and economic security. Donald Trump's tariff tantrum have been growing. After imposing 25% tariffs, the US president has threatened India yet again over its purchase of Russian oil. In a post on Truth Social, Trump went on to say that India is not only buying massive amounts of Russian oil, but also selling it on the open market for big profits, further claiming that India does not care how many people in Ukraine are being killed by the Russian war machine. Meanwhile, politics continues to erupt over this issue back home, with Congress accusing Prime Minister and Finance Minister of being silent and afraid of Donald Trump.
We live in complicated and uncertain times. Our collective desire is to see a fair and representative global order, not one dominated by a few. That quest is often articulated as political or economic rebalance. But I want to say this to you: obtaining respect and ensuring dignity for societies can also be achieved through cultural prowess, especially through cultural prowess.
And we're now being joined by Michael Kugelman, who's a South Asia analyst from Washington, D.C. Mr. Kugelman, how do you see India's sharpest pushback against the Trump tariff threat yet, calling it unreasonable and unjustified?
It was an important statement. I think there have been a lot of questions as to how New Delhi would respond, and now we've seen the statement. What stands out about it is that it is very fact-based. It cites data and facts showing that the Europeans and indeed the Americans have continued to do some trade with Russia after its invasion of Ukraine, thereby highlighting the hypocrisy that Trump's position represents. I do think, though, that this statement, this response from the External Affairs Ministry is more important for domestic political reasons in India than it is for its relations with the US. I think it's important that the Indian public see that the Indian government is ready to respond in a tough way. I don't think that President Trump is going to be I don't think he's going to be at all influenced by this statement from the Indian government. I think he has his mind made up about these tariffs, and the statement from New Delhi is not going to change his position at this point in time.
Also, Mr. Kugelman, do you think India is becoming a soft target for Western frustration over its own failed sanction strategy on Russia?
Well, I mean, if you go back and look at what happened right after the war began in Ukraine, there was a lot of unhappiness in the U.S. and in other Western countries, particularly in the EU, about India's relationship with Russia and its commercial relationship with Russia. But I think that foreign governments came around to the fact that India has this important relationship with Russia, and it's going to import cheap oil from Russia because it serves India's economic interests. And indeed, there is a view, certainly on the part of the U.S. government, that by importing cheap oil from Russia, India was actually helping stabilize global energy markets. So there was really no view at that point toward this idea of needing to consider sanctioning India because of its because of its doing business with Russia. Indeed, now we're seeing a very different position being taken by the U.S. and particularly by President Trump. But I think that this really comes down to other issues, to broader issues here involving President Trump, how he feels about the way that India's government has treated him, as well as his rigidly transactional and commercial view when it comes to foreign policy and wanting to at all costs pursue a foreign policy that at all costs is meant to uphold U.S. economic interests, and that entails applying pressure on any country, including a close partner like India, that is doing things that Trump feels don't serve U.S. interests, such as importing too much Russian oil and not enough American oil, even though, as you well know, India has been importing a lot of American energy in recent years at a rising rate, in fact.
Right. Mr. Kugelman, do stay with us. Let us tell our viewers how India has called out the West's hypocrisy on the Trump tariff threat. Now, India has said that targeting of India is unjustified and unreasonable. India has also said that the nations criticizing India indulged in trade with Russia themselves. US was actively encouraging imports by India. India goes on to say that European Union in 2024 had 67.5 billion euro bilateral trade with Russia, and European LNG imports from Russia was 16.5 million tons in the year 2024. Europe was also importing energy, fertilizers from Russia. This is what India has said in its rebuttal. And even US imports uranium, hexafluoride from Russia. So this is India's sharpest pushback yet against the Trump tariff threat. This is what India has said while calling out the West hypocrisy. Michael Kugelman continues to stay with us. Mr. Kugelman, do you think Donald Trump is now using tariffs as a geopolitical tool?
Oh, absolutely. That's very clear, and I think that one of the many reasons why he has been taking these tariff steps against India is he wants to essentially use India to help him serve his goals and his priorities with Russia and Ukraine. I mean, my view is that President Trump is very upset that Vladimir Putin did not heed President Trump's calls for Russia to stop fighting its war in Ukraine. And Trump is essentially taking its frustrations out on India and other countries that do business with Russia. He's taking his frustration that he has toward Putin on India and countries like them that do business with Russia, and so unfortunately, India appears to be getting dragged into this issue and this unhappiness that President Trump has with Putin. But again, I think that we have to go back to the fact that President Trump applies a very sharp commercial lens to his foreign policy, and that entails being willing to tariff any country that he feels is undercutting US economic interests. And his view, of course, is that India has long undercut US economic interests because of its own very high tariffs. This is Trump's position that he's taken for many years.
All right, Michael Kugelman, thank you for joining us on the broadcast on this Trump tariff threat issue.